They thought the old man was senile, a confused relic who'd forgotten he owned 47 acres of prime real estate. They broke ground without asking, poured foundations, raised walls, sold houses to families who had no idea they were building their dreams on stolen land. Malcolm watched every beam go up, every nail driven home. He waited. He let them finish. 96 houses, $12 million invested. Then he walked into that courtroom, slid the deed across the bench, and watched their world collapse in real time. Malcolm Thorne sat in his weathered armchair, the morning sun casting long shadows across the hardwood floor of his farmhouse. At 73, his hands still carried the calluses of a lifetime working the land his grandfather had purchased in 1947. Through the window, he could see them, the construction crews, their machinery churning up earth that didn't belong to them. The letter had arrived 6 months ago. Emerald Heights Homeowners Association, represented by Douglas Harriman of Harriman and Cross Legal Group. Professional letterhead, threatening language barely concealed beneath corporate politeness. Dear Mr. Thorne, it has come to our attention that you are occupying land designated for the Emerald Heights residential development. Please vacate within 30 days or face legal action. Malcolm had read it 3 times before setting it on the pile with the others. There had been 11 letters total, each more insistent than the last. His phone rang, the same number that had been calling daily for weeks. Mr. Thorne, this is Jennifer Calloway from Emerald Heights Management. We really need to discuss your situation. Malcolm said nothing. Mr. Thorne, are you there? We've been extremely patient, but you're interfering with a $50 million development. If you don't cooperate, we'll have no choice but. He hung up, not rudely, simply done with the conversation. Through the window, a surveying team was setting up equipment. Malcolm recognized the lead surveyor, a young man named Marcus who'd actually knocked on his door 2 weeks ago, polite but firm, asking if Malcolm understood he was in the way of progress. Malcolm had asked to see the property maps. Marcus had shown him documents stamped with county seals, subdivision plans, approved permits. Everything looked official, everything except the actual deed. Son, Malcolm had said, studying the papers, who told you this was your land? Emerald Heights Corporation owns this entire development zone. It's all in the public records. Public records? Malcolm had handed the papers back. Tell me something. Did anyone at your company actually check the title history, go back past 2010? Marcus had frowned. That's not my department, sir. I just survey what I'm told to survey. Now, watching the crews multiply, Malcolm made a phone call of his own. Castellano Law, how can I help you? This is Malcolm Thorne. I need to speak with Victoria. Victoria Castellano had handled his parents' estate in 2003. She told him then to keep every document, every survey, every photograph. Your family's ownership goes back before these modern developers even dreamed of this area, she'd said. If anyone ever challenges you, you have an ironclad case. 20 years later, that advice was about to pay dividends. Malcolm, Victoria's voice warmed the line. It's been ages, what's going on? He told her everything. The letters, the threats, the construction that had begun despite his presence. The silence on the other end lasted 5 seconds too long. Malcolm, are you telling me they're actually building on your property, right now, without your permission? 96 houses, according to the signs, 12-unit sections. They started with infrastructure 3 months ago. And you didn't stop them? Malcolm looked out at the crews. No, ma'am, I didn't. Why not? Because I wanted to see how far they'd go. Another pause, then Victoria laughed, not humor but recognition. You clever son of a bitch, you're going to let them finish. That was my thinking. Malcolm, do you understand what that means? If they complete construction, if they sell those houses to buyers, if people move in, when you prove ownership, the liability becomes catastrophic for them. I do understand. This could destroy an entire corporation. We're talking hundreds of millions in damages, legal fees, restitution to home buyers. This is scorched earth. Malcolm watched a cement truck pour another foundation. They sent me 11 letters telling me to get off my own land. They called me senile, confused, an obstruction. They never once asked to see my deed. Do you have it, the original? I have everything. Deed from 1947, every subsequent transfer. Surveys from 52, 68, 79, 98, and 2015. Tax records going back 78 years. Photographs. My grandfather's purchase agreement. Everything notarized, authenticated, and stored in a safety deposit box. Victoria's voice shifted into attorney mode. Don't communicate with them anymore. No calls, no letters, nothing. Let me file a quiet title action. We'll establish your ownership legally, then we'll watch them realize what they've done. How long? To file 2 weeks, to get a hearing, maybe 3 months, but Malcolm, this is going to get ugly. It already is ugly. They're just the ones who made it that way. The next morning, a black Mercedes pulled up to Malcolm's farmhouse. Douglas Harriman emerged, tailored suit slightly overdressed for rural inspection. He was mid-50s, silver hair, the kind of confidence that came from never losing. Malcolm met him on the porch. Mr. Thorne, I'm Douglas Harriman. I represent Emerald Heights Corporation. I think there's been a misunderstanding. No misunderstanding. Harriman smiled the smile of someone who'd crushed stronger men than Malcolm. Let me be direct. My clients have invested substantial capital into this development. They've obtained all necessary permits and approvals. This land is zoned for residential construction. Now, I understand you've lived here a long time, and I'm sympathetic to that. So let me make you an offer. We'll relocate you to a beautiful condo in the new development, all expenses paid, plus $200,000 for your trouble. Malcolm said nothing. That's a generous offer, Mr. Thorne, more than fair market value for this structure. Harriman gestured at the farmhouse with barely concealed disdain. Are you done? Excuse me. I asked if you were done, because if you are, you can leave my property now. Harriman's smile thinned. I'm trying to help you, but if you force this into litigation, I guarantee you'll lose everything. Legal fees alone will bankrupt you. Do you understand what you're up against? Malcolm met his eyes. Better than you do. Last chance, $250,000 and full relocation. This offer expires when I reach my car. Safe drive back. Harriman's expression hardened. You're making a serious mistake, old man. We have the law on our side. We have resources you can't imagine. By the time we're done, you'll be lucky to walk away with anything. Malcolm watched him return to the Mercedes, watched it disappear down the access road. Then he called Victoria. He came. Just left. Offered me $250,000 to disappear. And you said, no. Victoria's laugh echoed through the phone. Perfect. Let them keep digging. Every dollar they spend, every house they build, it's all evidence. Malcolm, when this hits court, it's going to be biblical. Through the window, Malcolm counted 7 new foundations being poured. 77 more to go. 3 months later, Emerald Heights had transformed Malcolm's land into a construction wonderland. Streets carved perfect grids through what used to be wild meadows. Streetlights stood sentinel along boulevards named Harmony Drive and Prosperity Lane. Underground utilities hummed beneath manicured lawns not yet seeded. Malcolm documented everything. Every morning he walked the perimeter with a digital camera photographing progress. Foundation dates, framing completion, roof installations. He kept meticulous notes, which crews worked which houses, when inspectors arrived, which subcontractors came and went. Victoria had warned him to stay invisible. Don't antagonize them, don't interfere, just watch and record. But staying invisible proved impossible when you lived at the epicenter of someone else's dream. The families started arriving in April. Malcolm was repairing a fence post when he saw the first one. A young couple, maybe early 30s, walking through a nearly completed house with a real estate agent. The woman was pregnant, hand resting on her belly, eyes bright with the kind of hope that comes from believing you've finally made it. The man pointed at features, the granite countertops, the hardwood floors, the bay window overlooking what would become a community park. The agent, a perky blonde named Stacy according to her yard sign, gestured enthusiastically at each detail. Malcolm felt something twist in his chest. These people had no idea. His phone rang. Victoria. They filed a motion to expedite removal. They're claiming you're interfering with lawful development and requesting a restraining order to keep you off the construction site. Their construction site? That's what they're calling it. The hearing is in 2 weeks. We need to show the judge your documentation. All of it? Everything? Malcolm, this is where it starts. Once they see the deed, once they understand what they've done, there's no walking it back. Malcolm watched the pregnant woman laughing at something the agent said. Victoria, there are families buying these houses, people who don't know. I know. They're going to lose everything they've invested. That's not your fault. Emerald Heights should have done their due diligence. That's on them, not you. But the families will have legal recourse against the developer. Malcolm, you can't take responsibility for their mistakes. They stole from you. They built an empire on land they never owned. You didn't create this situation. They did. He knew she was right, but watching that couple imagine their future in a house built on lies made his victory feel hollow. The restraining order hearing happened on a Tuesday. Malcolm wore his only suit, 30 years old but still serviceable. Victoria met him at the courthouse, carrying 2 boxes of documentation. Judge Catherine Morrison presided, a woman in her mid-60s with sharp eyes and a reputation for not suffering fools. Douglas Harriman arrived with 3 associates, each carrying leather briefcases that probably cost more than Malcolm's truck. Your Honor, Harriman began, this is a straightforward case of obstruction. Mr. Thorne has been occupying land zoned and approved for residential development. Despite numerous good faith attempts to resolve this situation, he refuses to acknowledge reality. My clients have invested over $12 million so far, with 96 families depending on this development's completion. Mr. Thorne's presence is disrupting construction, delaying timelines, and costing hundreds of thousands in lost revenue. Judge Morrison looked at Malcolm. Mr. Thorne, do you have representation? Victoria stood. Victoria Castellano, Your Honor, I represent Mr. Thorne. Ms. Castellano, does your client contest that this land is zoned for development? No, Your Honor. The zoning is accurate. However, zoning and ownership are separate issues. Harriman scoffed. Your Honor, we've done exhaustive title research. Emerald Heights Corporation legally purchased this land from Montgomery County in 2019 as part of a revitalization initiative. All transfers are properly recorded. Victoria opened the first box. Your Honor, I'd like to submit Exhibit A, the original deed of purchase, dated August 12, 1947. Malcolm Thorne's grandfather, Samuel Thorne, purchased 47 acres directly from the Henderson family, who held the land since 1889. The deed was properly filed with Montgomery County Register of Deeds. She passed copies to the judge and to Harriman. Harriman barely glanced at it. Your Honor, this is clearly a forgery. Our title search goes back to 1995, when the county acquired this land through abandonment proceedings. Abandonment? Victoria's voice could have cut steel. Mr. Thorne's family has paid property taxes continuously since 1947. Every single year I have receipts. She pulled out a thick folder. 78 years of tax payments, never missed, never late. The color began draining from Harriman's face. Judge Morrison studied the deed. Mr. Harriman, did your clients conduct a full title search, going back past county acquisition? Your Honor, the county assured us the title was clear. That's not what I asked. Harriman glanced at his associates. One of them whispered something urgent. Your Honor, we relied on county records and professional title insurance. This is the first we're hearing of any competing claim. Victoria smiled without warmth. That's because Mr. Thorne's family owned the land before it was ever misidentified as county property. The abandonment proceedings Mr. Harriman mentioned were filed incorrectly against the wrong parcel. The county made an administrative error in 1995, combining 2 separate parcels in their database. The Thorne property was never actually abandoned. It was always privately owned, always taxed, always maintained. Judge Morrison looked at Malcolm. Mr. Thorne, why didn't you contest this earlier, when construction began? Malcolm stood. Your Honor, I wanted to see if they'd do the right thing. I sent them documentation. I showed them my deed. They called me senile and told me to get off their land, so I decided to let them finish what they started. You let them build deliberately? Yes, ma'am. The judge's expression shifted, not anger, but recognition of something profound happening in her courtroom. Mr. Harriman, how many houses are completed? 37, Your Honor, with families already moved into 23 of them. And the total investment, including infrastructure, homes, and projected development, approximately $48 million. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. Judge Morrison set down the deed. I'm going to order an independent title examination, full historical search, going back to original land grants. This hearing is continued for 60 days. In the meantime, all construction is to cease immediately. Mr. Harriman, your clients are to make no further sales until this matter is resolved. Harriman stood, desperation creeping into his voice. Your Honor, that will bankrupt the development. We have contracts, obligations, families waiting. Then your clients should have been more careful about whose land they were building on. 60 days, Mr. Harriman. Come back with answers. Outside the courthouse, Harriman cornered Malcolm and Victoria. You son of a bitch, he hissed at Malcolm. You knew. From the beginning you knew, and you let us build anyway. Malcolm met his fury calmly. I gave you every chance to check. You chose not to. We'll bury you in appeals. We'll tie this up for years. You'll die before you see a penny. Victoria stepped between them. Mr. Harriman, threatening my client is a poor strategy, especially now that we have grounds for malicious prosecution, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and conversion of property. Your clients built $48 million of improvements on stolen land. Every penny of that is Mr. Thorne's unless you can prove otherwise. This isn't over. No, Victoria agreed. It's just beginning. That night, Malcolm received a visit from someone unexpected. The knock came at 8 p.m. Through the window, he saw her, the pregnant woman from the construction site, the one who'd been looking at houses with such hope. He opened the door. Mr. Thorne, her voice was shaking. I'm Rebecca Martinez. My husband and I bought house number 43. We closed last week. Malcolm's heart sank. Ma'am, I'm sorry, but... I know about the hearing. It's all over the community Facebook page. Everyone's panicking. Tears streamed down her face. We saved for 8 years for that down payment. Everything we had. Our baby's due in 3 months if we lose that house. Malcolm wanted to say something comforting, anything. But what comfort existed for someone whose dream was built on sand? I just wanted to see you, Rebecca continued. To see if you're real, if this is really happening. It's real. Why did you let them build if you knew? You could have stopped this. All these families were just collateral damage to you. The words hit like physical blows. It's not like that, Malcolm said quietly. I tried to tell them, they wouldn't listen. You should have tried harder, her voice broke. You should have stopped them before people like me got involved, before we put our lives into this. But you wanted revenge more than you wanted to do the right thing. She turned and walked back to her car, leaving Malcolm standing in the doorway with the weight of 23 families pressing down on his conscience. Victoria's words echoed, that's not your fault. But standing there, watching Rebecca's taillights disappear, Malcolm wondered if fault and responsibility were really that different. The independent title examination took 43 days. Malcolm spent that time watching Emerald Heights twist in the wind. Construction had stopped per the judge's order, leaving half-finished houses like open wounds across the landscape. Crews packed up equipment. Subcontractors filed for payment. The families already moved and lived in limbo, their mortgages accruing interest on homes that might not legally exist. The media discovered the story in week 3. Local developer faces crisis after building on private land, ran in the Montgomery County Gazette. Then the regional papers picked it up. Then the national outlets. Suddenly Malcolm's phone wouldn't stop ringing with reporters wanting his story. He declined every interview. Victoria had advised media silence until the legal picture clarified. But that didn't stop the press from camping outside his property, long lenses photographing his farmhouse against the backdrop of frozen construction. The narrative split predictably. Half the coverage painted Malcolm as a folk hero, the little guy standing up to corporate greed, the landowner defending what was rightfully his. The other half portrayed him as a vindictive old man ruining families for spite, a person who could have stopped everything but chose chaos instead. Rebecca Martinez became the face of the residents. She gave interviews, tearful and articulate, describing the dream home now trapped in legal hell. We're just normal people, she told CNN. We worked hard, we saved, we trusted the system, and now we're pawns in someone else's war. Malcolm stopped watching the news. The title examination results arrived via courier on a Thursday morning. Victoria called 30 seconds later. Malcolm, we won, completely. The examiner confirmed everything: original deed, continuous ownership, tax payments, the county's administrative error in 1995. It's all documented. The land is yours. It was always yours. He should have felt triumphant. Instead, he felt tired. What happens now? We go back to court. Judge Morrison will issue a declaratory judgment confirming your ownership. Then the real negotiations begin. Negotiations. Emerald Heights will have to deal with you. They've built $48 million of improvements on your land. They can't just tear it down and walk away. And the families who bought houses, their mortgages are technically invalid because the developer didn't have legal title to sell. Jesus Christ. Malcolm, this is about to become the biggest real estate disaster in state history. Multiple parties with competing interests. You, the developer, the homeowners, the lenders, the insurance companies. Everyone's going to sue everyone else. It's going to be chaos. I never wanted chaos. Victoria's voice softened. I know, but you wanted justice. Sometimes they come together. The declaratory judgment hearing was standing room only. Malcolm arrived early and found the courtroom packed with residents, developers, lawyers, and reporters. Rebecca Martinez sat in the front row, her husband's arm around her shoulders. Judge Morrison entered, and the room fell silent. I've reviewed the independent title examination, she began. The findings are clear and unambiguous. Malcolm Thorne holds legal title to the 47 acres in question, with ownership dating back to 1947. The county's 1995 abandonment proceedings were filed against an incorrect parcel due to administrative error. At no point did the Thorne family lose ownership or fail to maintain their property rights. Douglas Harriman stood. Your Honor, while we accept the examination's findings, we request consideration of equitable remedies. My clients acted in good faith, relying on county records and professional title insurance. To strip them of their substantial investments would be unjust. Good faith? Judge Morrison's eyebrows rose. Mr. Harriman, your clients received notice from Mr. Thorne before construction began. They received documentation proving his ownership. They chose to ignore it and proceed anyway. That's not good faith. That's gambler's arrogance. Your Honors, I'm not finished. The judge's tone could have frozen water. What we have here is a perfect storm of negligence, hubris, and corporate overreach. Emerald Heights Corporation cut corners. They relied on title insurance instead of doing thorough research. They dismissed the concerns of a long-time property owner because it was inconvenient. And now 23 families are living in houses built on stolen land because your clients couldn't be bothered to do their due diligence. Harriman opened his mouth and closed it again. Judge Morrison turned to Malcolm. Mr. Thorne, what remedy do you seek? Victoria stood, but Malcolm put a hand on her arm. Your Honor, may I speak? It's your property, Mr. Thorne, speak. Malcolm rose, feeling every eye in the courtroom on him. Your Honor, I wanted my land respected. I wanted acknowledgement that I was right and they were wrong. I wanted them to feel what it's like when someone powerful tells you your reality doesn't matter. He paused, looking at Rebecca Martinez. Her hand rested on her pregnant belly. I got all that, but I'm looking at these families and I'm realizing something. They're not my enemy. They're victims of the same arrogance that tried to run me over, so here's what I propose. Victoria's hand gripped his shoulder, a warning. He continued anyway. Emerald Heights Corporation pays me fair market value for the land, appraised before development, not after. That's approximately $2.3 million based on agricultural zoning. They also pay for a complete independent inspection of every house to ensure construction quality, plus establish a 10-year warranty fund for the residents. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. In exchange, I deed the land to the Homeowners Association for $1, making the residents the collective owners. The developer completes the remaining houses as originally planned, but sells them at cost, no profit margin. Any families who want out get full refunds of their down payments and closing costs. Harriman stood immediately. Your Honor, that's insane. We'd lose $20 million. You built on land you didn't own, Malcolm shot back. You should lose everything. I'm offering you a way to salvage your reputation and keep these families in their homes. Take it or face the alternative. What alternative? Malcolm's voice went cold. I evict every resident, you remove every structure, and I sue you for every dollar of profit you've made on my land plus punitive damages for trespass, conversion, and emotional distress. Ms. Castellano here is very good at her job. By the time we're done, Emerald Heights Corporation won't exist." The silence was absolute. Judge Morrison studied Malcolm. "Mr. Thorne, are you certain this is substantially less than you're entitled to?" "I'm 73 years old, Your Honor. I don't need millions. I need to know I stood my ground, and I need to sleep at night knowing I didn't ruin innocent people's lives because their developer was too arrogant to check a deed." The judge turned to Harriman. "Mr. Harriman, does your client accept these terms?" Harriman looked like he'd swallowed broken glass. "Your Honor, we need time to consult with our board. You have until court resumes Monday morning, 9 a.m. Accept Mr. Thorne's extraordinarily generous offer, or I issue an order for immediate eviction and removal of all structures. Your choice." She brought down the gavel. That night, Malcolm found Rebecca Martinez sitting on his porch steps. "I heard what you did," she said, "in court. News travels fast. Everyone's talking about it. Half the community thinks you're a saint. The other half still thinks you're a vindictive old man. What do you think?" Rebecca looked out at the development, her home somewhere in that maze of streets and houses. "I think you're human. I think you wanted justice, and then you realized justice and revenge aren't the same thing. Took me long enough. Most people never figure it out." She stood, one hand supporting her back. "My baby's due in 8 weeks. I'm terrified I'm going to go into labor in a house we might not get to keep. The developer will accept. They don't have a choice. And if they don't—" Malcolm met her eyes. "Then I make sure every family gets made whole, even if I have to pay for it myself. That's a promise." Rebecca's expression cracked, tears welling. "Why? Why do you care now?" "Because you were right. Outside my door, when you asked why I let them build, you were right. I could have stopped this before you got hurt. I chose not to, and that's on me. The developer chose to build on your land. That's on them. We can both be wrong." Rebecca wiped her eyes. "Thank you for the offer, for trying to fix this. It doesn't undo everything, but thank you." She walked back toward the development. Malcolm watched until she disappeared into the twilight. Victoria called an hour later. "You do realize you just gave away approximately $50 million in potential settlement value?" "I do." "Malcolm, I'm your attorney. I'm supposed to advise you to maximize your position, not give it away." "Then advise me." "Fine, you're an idiot. You had them by the throat. You could have destroyed that corporation and retired wealthy." "I don't want to be wealthy. I want my land back with my conscience intact." Victoria sighed. "You're a better person than I am." "No, just an old man who got tired of being angry." Monday morning, Emerald Heights Corporation accepted the terms. Douglas Harriman delivered the response personally, looking like he'd aged 5 years in 4 days. "My client agrees to all conditions," he said stiffly. "Fair market value for the land, inspection fund, warranty fund, completion at cost, refunds for any residents who wish to exit. We'll have the paperwork drawn up within a week." Judge Morrison made it official. "This court finds the settlement to be fair and equitable under the extraordinary circumstances. Mr. Thorne, you're to be commended for your compassion. Mr. Harriman, your client is fortunate Mr. Thorne is more generous than they deserve." As the courtroom emptied, Harriman approached Malcolm. "You could have taken everything," the lawyer said quietly. "Why didn't you?" Malcolm thought about Rebecca, about the families living in limbo, about revenge and its cost. Because winning isn't the same as being right, and being right isn't worth destroying people who never wronged me in the first place. The corporation wronged you. Then the corporation pays, not the families, not the kids who will grow up in those houses, just the people who made the decisions. Harriman extended his hand. Malcolm shook it. "For what it's worth," Harriman said, "I'm sorry, we should have listened when you tried to tell us." "Yes, you should have." The settlement transferred $2.3 million to Malcolm's account on a Wednesday. He stared at the number on his computer screen and felt nothing, just exhaustion. Victoria had structured the deal precisely. Emerald Heights Corporation paid Malcolm the appraised agricultural value, established a $3 million inspection fund, created a $5,010,000 warranty fund for the residents, and agreed to complete the remaining 59 houses at cost. The total hit to the corporation was approximately $28 million, Enough to hurt, not enough to kill. The deed transfer happened quietly. Malcolm signed the property over to the Emerald Heights Homeowners Association for $1. 96 families became collective owners of the land their homes sat on, protected by covenant and structure. Rebecca Martinez sent a handwritten note. "You gave us more than a house. You gave us a future. Thank you isn't enough, but it's all I have. Our daughter's name is Hope." Malcolm put the note on his refrigerator. But the story wasn't over. Stories like this never end cleanly. The first aftershock came from the title insurance company. Pacific Meridian Title Insurance, which had insured Emerald Heights' purchase, filed a lawsuit against Montgomery County for negligent misrepresentation of property records. The county's 1995 administrative error had cost Pacific Meridian millions. They wanted it back. The county responded by suing its former records clerk, a woman named Dorothy Simmons, 71 years old, who'd made the database entry error 30 years ago. She'd retired in 2008 with a modest pension. Now she faced potential personal liability for a multi-million-dollar mistake. Malcolm watched the news coverage with growing horror. Dorothy Simmons, gray-haired and bewildered, standing outside the courthouse. "I made a mistake. I typed the wrong parcel number. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I was just doing my job." He called Victoria. "They're suing a retired clerk for a 30-year-old typo." Welcome to American litigation. Everyone's looking for someone to blame, and Dorothy is the easiest target. "That's insane. She doesn't have millions of dollars." "No, but she has homeowners insurance, a pension, probably some retirement savings. They'll take what they can get." Malcolm felt the anger returning, not the cold fury he'd carried against Emerald Heights, but a hot, immediate rage at the injustice of it all. "Get me a meeting with Pacific Meridian's lawyers." "Malcolm, just do it, please." The meeting happened in Pacific Meridian's downtown office. 3 lawyers, a claims adjuster, and a regional VP named Gerald Hartwick, who looked like he'd never missed a golf game. "Mr. Thorne," Hartwick began with corporate smoothness, "we appreciate you coming in. I hope you understand our position. We insured a transaction based on county records. When those records proved false, we suffered substantial losses. So you're going after a 71-year-old woman who made a typo 3 decades ago. It's unfortunate, but it's unconscionable." Malcolm's voice cut through Hartwick's polish. "Dorothy Simmons doesn't have the money you're chasing. You're going to destroy her life over an accident." "Mr. Thorne, with respect, this isn't your concern." Malcolm pulled out his phone and played a recording, the conversation with Victoria where she'd explained the litigation chain. He'd recorded it deliberately, knowing this moment might come. "I own the land that caused this mess," Malcolm said, "which means I'm the proximate cause of Pacific Meridian's losses. If you want to sue someone, sue me." The lawyers exchanged glances. "Mr. Thorne," one of them ventured, "you weren't negligent. You're not liable for our losses." "Maybe not legally, but ethically. I let Emerald Heights build knowing what would happen. I engineered this situation. Dorothy Simmons made a typo. I made a choice. Big difference." Hartwick leaned forward. "What exactly are you proposing?" "Drop the suit against Dorothy. I'll pay Pacific Meridian's documented losses, the difference between what you paid out to Emerald Heights and what you're getting back through salvage and subrogation. Not a penny more, but enough to make you whole. That could be $4 to $6 million. Malcolm had done the math. 3.8 million according to the public filings. I have 2.3 million from Emerald Heights. I'll mortgage the farmhouse for the rest. You'd bankrupt yourself to protect someone you don't even know. She made a mistake. I made a choice. She shouldn't lose everything for being human." Hartwick studied Malcolm for a long moment. "You're serious?" "Completely." "Why?" "Because I spent 6 months watching revenge play out. I've seen what happens when you prioritize being right over being decent. I'm done with that." One of the lawyers cleared her throat. "Mr. Hartwick, there's precedent for this kind of settlement. If Mr. Thorne's willing to make us whole, we could structure an agreement that protects both parties and dismisses the Simmons claim." Hartwick leaned back. "You'd really do this? Destroy your financial security for a stranger?" Malcolm thought about Rebecca Martinez, about her daughter Hope, about all the collateral damage that happened when powerful people played games with other people's lives. "I've got enough to live on." Dorothy Simmons needs her pension and her peace of mind more than I need a comfortable retirement. That's remarkably principled. No, Malcolm said quietly, it's remarkably overdue. The settlement took 6 weeks to structure. Pacific Meridian accepted $3.8 million from Malcolm in exchange for dismissing all claims against Dorothy Simmons and the county. Malcolm mortgaged his farmhouse, the home his grandfather built, to cover the difference between his settlement money and what he owed. The day the papers finalized, Malcolm drove to Dorothy Simmons' house. She lived in a modest bungalow on the east side of town, the kind of neighborhood where neighbors knew each other and kids played in the street. Dorothy answered the door, recognition flickering across her face. Mr. Thorne. Mrs. Simmons, may I come in? She led him to a small living room filled with photographs. Grandchildren, family vacations, a lifetime of normal, beautiful moments. I heard what you did, Dorothy said, sitting across from him. My lawyer called yesterday. He said the lawsuit was dismissed because you paid them. Yes, ma'am. Why, you don't know me. This wasn't your fault. Malcolm looked at the photographs, evidence of a life well lived, a life that shouldn't be destroyed by a 30-year-old typo. Because you made a mistake and powerful people decided to punish you for it. I've seen that story before. I didn't want to see it again. Tears streamed down Dorothy's face. I can't repay you. I don't have millions of dollars. I don't want repayment. I want you to keep living your life. Keep being a grandmother, keep being human, that's enough. But you mortgaged your house, you gave up your security. Malcolm smiled. I'm 73, I don't need much. And honestly, Mrs. Simmons, I've been angry for so long, fighting so hard, it's exhausting, this feels better. She reached across and took his hand. Thank you, that's not enough, but thank you. Malcolm squeezed her hand gently. It's exactly enough. The media found out 3 days later. The headlines wrote themselves. Property owner pays millions to protect retired clerk, and from revenge to redemption, Malcolm Thorne's journey. The narrative shifted again. Malcolm became the folk hero completely. The man who stood up for principle, who chose compassion over profit, who protected the vulnerable at his own expense. He hated it. The attention, the interviews, the requests for speaking engagements. People wanted to make him a symbol, a saint, a lesson in morality. But Malcolm didn't feel like any of those things. He felt like a tired old man who'd made mistakes and was trying to fix them before he ran out of time. Victoria called with news. Malcolm, I'm getting calls from other homeowners in the development. They want to thank you. They're planning some kind of community event. Please tell them no. They're doing it anyway. This Saturday. Community barbecue. You're the guest of honor whether you like it or not. Victoria. Just show up, let them say thank you. You gave 96 families a chance to keep their homes. That means something. Saturday arrived with perfect weather. Malcolm drove to the development, his former land, now theirs, and found the streets filled with families. Balloons, music, grills smoking with burgers and hot dogs. Children ran through sprinklers while adults gathered in clusters, laughing and talking. Rebecca Martinez met him at the entrance, her daughter Hope in her arms. 8 weeks old, tiny and perfect. You came, Rebecca said, smiling. Wasn't given much choice. We wanted you to see this, all of this. She gestured at the celebration. A month ago, we thought we'd lose everything. Now we're here because you chose to be human instead of right. Malcolm looked at Hope. Can I? Rebecca handed him the baby. Malcolm held her carefully, this small person whose existence he'd nearly destroyed through pride and anger. Hey there, Hope. Welcome to the world. Sorry it's complicated. Rebecca laughed. It's always complicated, but it's also beautiful sometimes, thanks to you. The afternoon passed in a blur of introductions and thanks. Malcolm met families whose names he'd never know, saw children who'd grow up in houses built on land 3 generations of his family had owned. It should have felt like loss. Instead, it felt like completion. As the sun set, Douglas Harriman appeared, out of place in casual clothes, clearly uncomfortable. Mr. Thorne. Mr. Harriman, didn't expect to see you here. I wanted to tell you something. Emerald Heights Corporation is dissolving. The losses from this development, combined with our reputation damage, killed the company. We're filing for bankruptcy next month. Malcolm felt no satisfaction. I'm sorry to hear that. Don't be, we deserved it. Harriman looked around at the families. We got arrogant, thought we could cut corners and force our way through any obstacle. You taught us otherwise. Expensive lesson. The only kind that sticks. Harriman extended his hand. For what it's worth, I wish we'd listened to you from the beginning, would have saved everyone a lot of pain. Malcolm shook his hand. Would have saved me too, I wasn't innocent in this. No, but you made it right, that counts for something. The party wound down around 9. Malcolm found himself sitting on a bench in the community park, the one he'd watched being built from his farmhouse window. Around him, children played while their parents cleaned up, the detritus of celebration scattered across the grass. Victoria found him there. Ready to go. In a minute. She sat beside him. You did good, Malcolm, better than good. You turned a catastrophe into something decent. I turned my revenge into their second chance. Doesn't make me a hero. Maybe not, but it makes you better than most people. Most people would have taken the money and run. Malcolm watched a father push his daughter on a swing, her laughter echoing in the twilight. I spent 6 months angry, watching them build, planning my revenge, imagining their faces when they realized what they'd done. And you know what? When it finally happened, when I won, it didn't feel like I thought it would. What did it feel like? Empty, like I'd won a war but lost something important in the process. He gestured at the houses. These people, they didn't wrong me. They just wanted homes. Destroying them to hurt Emerald Heights would have made me the villain, not the victor. So you chose differently. I chose human, finally. Victoria stood, offering her hand. Malcolm took it, letting her pull him to his feet. Come on, let's get you home. Home, Malcolm looked back at the development one last time. Funny thing is, this was home for 73 years. Now it's someone else's, and I'm okay with that. Because you're better than the people who tried to take it. No, Malcolm said as they walked to his truck. Because I learned the same lesson they did. Just because you can win doesn't mean you should. Sometimes being human is more important than being right. Behind them, the lights of 96 houses blazed against the darkness. A constellation of second chances, built on land that had seen 3 generations of Malcolm Thorne's family and would now see dozens more of others. It wasn't the victory Malcolm had imagined, but it was the one he needed. 6 months later, Malcolm stood in his farmhouse, smaller now but still his. The mortgage payment hit his account each month like clockwork, a reminder of the choice he'd made. He'd sold off some furnishings, things he didn't need. The house felt emptier but cleaner somehow. Dorothy Simmons had sent a Christmas card with a photo of her grandchildren. Still can't believe what you did, she'd written. You saved my life, I'll never forget it. Rebecca Martinez visited monthly, bringing Hope for what she called grandpa visits. Malcolm wasn't Hope's grandfather, but the title fit better than the old man who almost destroyed her parents' future. The legal aftermath continued to ripple. Emerald Heights Corporation had dissolved, as Harriman predicted, with assets liquidated to cover debts. Douglas Harriman himself had left legal practice entirely. Last Malcolm heard he was teaching business ethics at a community college. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Montgomery County had overhauled its records department, implementing triple verification systems for property transfers. The county manager had personally apologized to Malcolm, to Dorothy Simmons, to the residents. It didn't undo the chaos, but it might prevent the next one. Pacific Meridian Title Insurance had revised its underwriting standards, requiring historical title searches going back a century for any transaction over $1 million. The industry trade journals had dubbed it the Thorne precedent. Malcolm's story had become shorthand for due diligence, for the cost of arrogance, for choosing compassion over revenge. Law schools taught it. Business ethics courses dissected it. Malcolm ignored all of it, content to live quietly in the house his grandfather built. Spring arrived with wild optimism, the kind of weather that made you believe in fresh starts. Malcolm was working in his garden, smaller now but still productive, when he heard a vehicle approach. A Tesla pulled into his driveway. A woman emerged, mid-40s, expensive suit, the bearing of someone used to getting what they wanted. Mr. Thorne. That's me. Jennifer Castellano, Victoria's daughter. She asked me to come by. Malcolm's stomach dropped. Is Victoria? She's fine, but she wanted me to discuss something with you. Jennifer pulled out a tablet. My mother's firm has been approached by several parties interested in your story. Publishing houses, documentary producers, even a streaming platform. They want to tell what happened here. No. Mr. Thorne, I understand your reluctance, but... I said no. I'm not interested in profiting from other people's mistakes. Jennifer smiled, Victoria's smile on a different face. That's exactly what my mother said you'd say, which is why she wants you to consider donating any proceeds to a specific cause. She showed him the tablet, a proposal for the Second Chance Housing Trust, a nonprofit foundation that would help families facing property disputes, title challenges, or housing insecurity. Funded by Malcolm's story, run by people who understood what it meant to nearly lose everything. Your story could help thousands of families, Jennifer said. Not just these 96, but people all over the country facing similar situations. My mother thinks you'd want that. Malcolm studied the proposal. Dorothy Simmons was listed as a board member. Rebecca Martinez was the proposed executive director. Even Douglas Harriman's name appeared as an advisory consultant on corporate accountability. All the people I tried to protect or tried to destroy, working together. Your story brought them together. They want to turn your experience into something that helps others avoid the same chaos. Malcolm sat down on his porch steps, feeling every one of his 74 years. I never wanted to be a lesson. Too late, you already are. Jennifer sat beside him. The question is whether that lesson helps anyone or just gets forgotten. Malcolm called a meeting. His farmhouse was too small, so they gathered in the Emerald Heights Community Center, a building that hadn't existed a year ago, built on land that had been his. Dorothy Simmons arrived first, nervous but determined. Rebecca Martinez came with hope, now 7 months old and everything. Douglas Harriman showed up looking uncomfortable but present. Victoria attended via video conference, recovering from a minor surgery. Thank you all for coming, Malcolm began. Jennifer Castellano approached me with a proposal. People want to tell our story, make money from it, frankly. And Jennifer's mother thinks we should let them, but funnel everything into a foundation that helps other families. What kind of foundation? Dorothy asked. Rebecca pulled up the proposal on a laptop. Second Chance Housing Trust. We'd provide legal assistance to families facing property disputes, title challenges, predatory developers. We'd fund title examinations for low-income homebuyers. We'd train real estate professionals on due diligence. Basically, we'd stop other people from going through what we went through. Using money from telling our story? Harriman's voice was skeptical. That feels exploitative. Versus what? Malcolm challenged. Letting it get forgotten, we went through hell, all of us. If that hell can prevent someone else's, isn't that worth it? Dorothy raised her hand tentatively. I'd want one condition. Part of the foundation has to focus on protecting workers who make mistakes. People like me who do their best but aren't perfect. We need legal defense funds for ordinary people facing extraordinary consequences. Rebecca nodded. And protection for homebuyers. Education about title insurance, property rights, how to verify ownership before you invest everything. So families don't end up terrified they'll lose their homes. Harriman leaned forward. I'd add corporate accountability training, teaching developers and their lawyers to do real due diligence, to listen to concerns, to prioritize accuracy over profit. Maybe if Emerald Heights had that training, none of this would have happened. And reconciliation services, Malcolm added. When disputes do happen, helping people find solutions that don't destroy everyone involved. Mediation, negotiation, the kind of thing that could have stopped this before it became war. Victoria's voice came through the laptop speaker. So we're doing this, turning your collective nightmare into something constructive. They looked at each other, victims and villains, the wronged and the wrong, people who'd been enemies 6 months ago. Yes, Malcolm said, we're doing this. The book came first, Built on Stolen Ground. The true story of justice, revenge, and redemption hit shelves 8 months later. Malcolm read his advance copy with mixed feelings, seeing his anger and mistakes laid bare in black and white. The documentary followed. Cameras interviewed everyone, Malcolm, Rebecca, Dorothy, even Harriman. The residents of Emerald Heights shared their stories. Pacific Meridian's lawyers explained the insurance nightmare. County officials detailed the administrative reforms. The streaming platform produced a limited series, dramatizing the events with actors who looked nothing like the real people. Malcolm refused to watch it, but the reviews called it a cautionary tale about corporate hubris and one man's choice between revenge and redemption. The money flowed into the Second Chance Housing Trust, more than anyone expected, enough to hire staff, rent office space, fund actual operations. Rebecca Martinez left her job to run it full-time. Dorothy Simmons volunteered 3 days a week. Harriman taught workshops on corporate due diligence, penance delivered as education. Within a year, the trust had helped 43 families facing property disputes. Within 2 years, that number reached 200. The impact rippled, one saved home at a time, one prevented catastrophe after another. Malcolm's 75th birthday arrived on a Tuesday. He'd planned to spend it quietly, maybe have dinner with Victoria, call it good. Instead, he got a surprise. Every resident of Emerald Heights showed up at his farmhouse. 96 families bringing food and decorations, transforming his small property into a celebration. They hung a banner, "Thank you, Malcolm, for everything." Rebecca found him standing on the porch, overwhelmed. "We couldn't let this day pass without marking it," she said. "You gave us our homes, you gave us a foundation that's helping thousands. You gave us an example of what choosing right over revenge looks like. I made mistakes, and you fixed them, that's the point." She handed him a framed photograph, aerial view of the development, 96 houses arranged in their careful grid, lights blazing in every window. "This is your legacy, Malcolm, not the land you owned, but the lives you protected." Hope, walking now, a tiny tornado of energy, crashed into Malcolm's legs, hugging him. He picked her up, this child who represented everything his revenge might have destroyed. "Are you happy?" Hope asked with a toddler's directness. Malcolm considered the question seriously. Was he happy? His bank account was depleted. His farmhouse was mortgaged. His quiet retirement had become public property. He'd lost the land 3 generations of Thorns had maintained. But 96 families had homes. Dorothy Simmons had her peace. Hundreds of other families had been helped by a foundation born from his choice. Douglas Harriman was teaching ethics instead of practicing exploitation. "Yeah, Hope, I'm happy." "Good." She squirmed down and ran off to join other children playing in his yard. Victoria appeared beside him, out of her chair now, recovering well. "You know what your grandfather would say about all this? That I was an idiot for giving away the land." "No," Victoria smiled. "He'd say you understood what ownership really means, not just having legal title but accepting responsibility for how your choices affect others. That's the lesson you learned. That's what you taught." Malcolm watched the families celebrating on land that had been his, was stolen, and became theirs through a circuitous path of justice and mercy. "I spent 73 years thinking ownership meant control. Turns out it means stewardship. Took you long enough to figure out. Better late than never." 3 years later, Malcolm received a call from an unfamiliar number. A woman's voice, young and urgent. "Mr. Thorne, this is Alicia Henderson. I'm calling from Texas. My family is facing a situation. A developer claims they own land my grandmothers lived on for 40 years. They're threatening eviction. I saw the documentary about what happened to you. The Second Chance Housing Trust website says you sometimes consult on cases." Malcolm felt the old familiar sensation, anger at powerful people steamrolling the vulnerable. But now it was tempered with experience, with knowledge, with the understanding that revenge solved nothing but strategic justice could change everything. "Tell me about your grandmother's land." Alicia explained. A development corporation forged documents, a county records office that hadn't done proper verification. The story was depressingly familiar, Malcolm's nightmare, replayed with different names in a different state. "Have you contacted the trust?" Malcolm asked. "Yes, Rebecca Martinez is sending a lawyer tomorrow, but I wanted to talk to you, to ask, is it worth fighting? My grandmother is 86. The stress is killing her. Maybe we should just take their buyout offer and walk away." Malcolm closed his eyes, seeing Dorothy Simmons' face, Rebecca's tears, the families who'd almost lost everything. Fighting is hard, but walking away means letting them win, and they'll do it to someone else. If your grandmother's ownership is legitimate, if the documents prove it, then you fight, not for revenge, for everyone who comes after you. How do we win? Document everything. Get the best lawyer the trust can provide. Don't let anger make you stupid. I made that mistake. Focus on what's right, not what feels good. And remember that the goal isn't to destroy them. It's to make sure your grandmother keeps her land and they never do this again. Like what you did. Better than what I did. Learn from my mistakes. I wasted 6 months on revenge when I should have been building a solution from day one. Alicia's voice steadied. Thank you, Mr. Thorne, for everything, for fighting your fight so people like my grandmother have a chance to fight theirs. After she hung up, Malcolm sat in his quiet farmhouse and felt the weight of legacy settle on his shoulders. Not the legacy of land. That was gone, redistributed to 96 families. But the legacy of choice, of proving that how you win matters as much as whether you win. 5 years after the original verdict, Malcolm attended the Second Chance Housing Trust's annual gala. 500 people packed the ballroom, families they'd helped, lawyers who volunteered, advocates and activists, and ordinary people who believed housing was a right worth protecting. Rebecca Martinez took the podium, Hope, now 5 years old, standing beside her. 5 years ago, Rebecca began, my family almost lost everything because a corporation was too arrogant to check a deed. One man's choice to seek justice instead of revenge changed that. But more importantly, his choice to turn his victory into a tool to help others created this. She gestured at the room. We've helped 2,800 families stay in their homes. We've trained 6,000 real estate professionals in proper due diligence. We've lobbied for legislative reform in 12 states. We've created a model for how property disputes can be resolved with humanity and justice instead of just legal warfare. Applause filled the ballroom. But none of that happens without Malcolm Thorne's first principle. Power without responsibility is tyranny. Whether you're a developer building houses, an insurance company writing policies, or an individual fighting for your rights, how you wield your power defines who you are. Rebecca looked directly at Malcolm. Malcolm taught us that winning isn't enough. You have to win right. And when you do, you create something that lasts longer than any single victory. Hope walked to the edge of the stage. Mr. Malcolm, will you come up here? Malcolm shook his head, but the crowd was already applauding, pushing him forward. He climbed the stairs slowly, feeling every year. Hope handed him a plaque, for being brave and nice. The adult version, read aloud by Rebecca. The Malcolm Thorne Award for Principled Justice, presented annually to individuals who fight for what's right while maintaining their humanity and creating lasting change. Malcolm stared at the plaque, his name permanently attached to a standard of behavior. The irony wasn't lost. The angry old man who'd let a corporation build millions of dollars of structures just to watch them suffer, now memorialized as a symbol of principled action. I don't deserve this, he said into the microphone. Rebecca smiled. Nobody who deserves it thinks they do. That's how we know they're right. Malcolm Thorne died on a Wednesday morning 2 years later in his sleep, in the farmhouse his grandfather had built. He was 79 years old. The mortgage was paid off. Rebecca Martinez and the Emerald Heights Homeowners Association had quietly retired the debt as a thank you gift for his 77th birthday. The funeral filled the community center. All 96 families attended. Dorothy Simmons spoke, tears streaming as she described the man who'd saved her life. Douglas Harriman gave a eulogy about redemption and second chances. Rebecca Martinez read a letter Hope had written. Mr. Malcolm was my friend. He made mistakes and fixed them. That's what heroes do. Victoria Castellano, 81 now and still sharp, stood at the end. Malcolm used to say he wasn't a hero, she told the crowd. He said he was just a stubborn old man who got tired of being angry. But here's what Malcolm never understood. Heroes aren't people who never make mistakes. Heroes are people who make mistakes, acknowledge them, and do the hard work of making things right. She gestured at the community. This is Malcolm's real monument, not the land he owned or the money he gave away, but the lives he touched and the standard he set. He taught us that justice without mercy is just revenge, and revenge without purpose is just cruelty. He showed us there's always a third way. The hard way, the human way, the way that costs you something but creates something lasting. The crowd stood in silence. Then slowly they began to applaud, not the celebratory applause of victory, but the solemn recognition of a life that mattered, mistakes and all. 10 years after the original verdict, Emerald Heights held a ceremony. They'd converted Malcolm's original farmhouse into a community museum, the Malcolm Thorne Center for Property Rights and Community Justice. The building held exhibits on the case, on property law, on the importance of due diligence. But the centerpiece was Malcolm's original deed from 1947, framed and mounted with 3 accompanying plaques. The first, Samuel Thorne's purchase agreement, proof of legitimate ownership. The second, the county's 1995 administrative error, proof of how systems fail. The third, Malcolm's deed transfer to the Homeowners Association for $1, proof that how you use power matters more than power itself. Hope Martinez, 15 now and volunteering at the trust, gave tour to school groups. She'd tell Malcolm's story to children who hadn't been born when it happened, explaining how one man's choice between revenge and redemption had created a foundation that helped thousands. Mr. Malcolm could have destroyed everyone, she'd say. He had the legal right, but he chose to be human instead, and that choice mattered more than any law. The children would ask, was he a good person? Hope would consider this carefully. She'd learned Malcolm's nuance. He was a person, he made mistakes, he got angry, he wanted revenge, but then he chose something better. That's what made him good, not being perfect, but trying to be better. 20 years later, the Malcolm Thorne Award had been given to 57 people. Property rights advocates, housing activists, lawyers who fought for the vulnerable, developers who prioritized ethics over profit. Each recipient understood they were carrying a standard set by a stubborn old man who'd learned, late in life, that winning right mattered more than simply winning. The Second Chance Housing Trust had helped over 30,000 families, prevented hundreds of predatory developments, and reformed property law in 23 states. The model had spread internationally: Canada, the UK, Australia, each adapting Malcolm's principle. Power requires responsibility and justice requires humanity. Rebecca Martinez, retiring as executive director at 61, gave her final speech at the Trust's annual gala. When I was pregnant with Hope, I stood on Malcolm Thorne's porch and called him vindictive. I accused him of caring more about revenge than people. I was right. At that moment, I was right. But Malcolm heard me. He changed. Not because he had to, but because he chose to, and that choice created everything we've built. She looked out at the crowd, hundreds of people whose lives had been touched by Malcolm's legacy. We honor Malcolm not because he was perfect, but because he was human. He got angry. He wanted revenge. He let people build on his land just to watch them suffer. Those aren't admirable qualities, but when he recognized what he'd done, when he saw the human cost of his anger, he changed course. He chose differently. He made it right. That's the real lesson of Malcolm Thorne's life. Not that revenge is wrong, we all know that. Not that justice matters, that's obvious. The lesson is that it's never too late to choose better, never too late to turn your victory into someone else's second chance, never too late to be human. Hope Martinez, 35, and the Trust's new executive director, stood beside her mother. In her arms, she held her own daughter, 3 years old, named Samantha Malcolm Martinez, carrying forward the name of a man who'd learned the hardest way that how you win defines everything. "Mama," Samantha asked, "who's Malcolm?" Hope looked at the plaque on the wall, Malcolm's photo, 73 years old, standing in front of his farmhouse with 96 houses visible in the background. Not smiling, but at peace. Malcolm was the man who taught us that owning land means nothing if you lose your humanity. He was angry and stubborn, and he made mistakes. But he fixed them. He chose right over easy, humanity over victory. And because of that choice, thousands of families have homes they might have lost. Was he a hero? Hope considered the question, the same one children had asked her when she gave tour 20 years ago. He was human, and he chose to be better. Sometimes that's the same thing. Outside, the sun set over Emerald Heights, 96 houses, 20 years older now, holding families who'd never known Malcolm Thorne but lived because of his choices. Children played in streets named for values: Justice Drive, Mercy Lane, Redemption Road. The land that 3 generations of Thornes had owned, that a corporation had stolen, that an old man had reclaimed and redistributed, it was home now. Not his home. Theirs, and that finally was exactly right. Malcolm Thorne had wanted to be remembered. He'd wanted his deed respected, his ownership acknowledged, his rights vindicated. He'd gotten all that. But his real legacy wasn't the deed framed in a museum or the award bearing his name. It was simpler and more profound. He'd proven that even in your darkest moment, even when you have every right to destroy your enemies, you can still choose mercy. You can still choose human. You can still choose right. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes, that choice changes everything. Retry.